An officer nearly arrested me for being on my own land. That's what almost happened until I presented my property deed. A woman named Karen had been tormenting everyone in our lakeside neighborhood for several months, making police calls on residents who simply existed near her. She made legal threats demanding $50,000, submitted fraudulent complaints to authorities, and attempted to corrupt county workers to have me removed from my property. The twist? She had no clue I was the owner of the $800,000 home she lived in as a tenant. Imagine dawn arriving at Lake Serenity, with pine scent blending into the morning fog, when police lights suddenly flash across my late grandfather's cottage. Two patrol vehicles arrive on the gravel drive, and Brenda Carmichael appears on her balcony wearing a vivid pink robe, gesturing toward me as though I'm a wanted criminal. How would you handle being reported to police while fishing at your own residence? Share your thoughts below. Tell me your location. I'm guessing many of you have experienced HOA nightmares too. I'm Marcus, and my story begins 3 years back when paradise seemed within reach. Following 2 decades in military supply chain management and a divorce that devastated me financially, I received my grandfather's lakeside cabin in Lake Serenity, Minnesota. The town holds 3,200 residents, where the biggest excitement previously involved Mrs. Henderson's cat taking fish from pier areas. The cottage is modest, a 1960s A-frame structure on 2 acres of pristine land. Daily, I'd wake to loon sounds across glassy water, walk onto dock planks smoothed by 4 decades of Minnesota climate, and inhale air pure enough to cleanse my lungs of 20 years breathing military vehicle exhaust. The location carried my childhood memories, aged cedar blending with pine needles, and that distinctive metallic lake water aroma at sunrise. For 2 wonderful years, Lake Serenity lived up to its reputation. 47 homes dotted 8 miles of waterfront, a combination of working-class locals and seasonal residents, everyone respecting one simple code: acknowledge neighbors, assist during emergencies, and otherwise respect privacy. Then Brenda arrived like a hurricane. She purchased the lake's most ostentatious property, an $800,000 oversized mansion that appeared misplaced, like transplanting suburban Texas architecture into Minnesota wilderness. During her initial week, she toured half the lake by pontoon, consistently dressed in blindingly white capri pants and aircraft-visible cardigans, superficially pleasant, but with eyes cold as frozen January lake water. Everything shifted one morning while I sat dockside with peaceful coffee, hearing an overpowered pontoon motor disturbing the morning tranquility like a chainsaw through fabric. "Greetings, neighbor." Brenda's voice projected across water with tax audit warmth. She approached my dock displaying a used car salesman smile. "I'm Brenda Carmichael from the Executive Estate property." "Executive Estate? Seriously? I'm conducting official HOA business," she declared, presenting a manila folder theatrically like a prize reveal. "The Lake Serenity Homeowners Association approved updated appearance requirements, and unfortunately your rustic arrangements don't comply with community rules." I placed my mug down forcefully, creating a bell-like sound against wood. "What homeowners association?" Her artificial smile revealed teeth beneath. "The organization protecting property values from negative influences. That aluminum watercraft must be removed, and honestly, your scattered fishing equipment makes everything resemble an exploded bait store." My negative influence was a 1995 boat that caught more fish than her expensive floating living space ever could. The scattered equipment consisted of my grandfather's hand-carved rod supports and antique tackle storage. "Ma'am, this land has belonged to my family since before your birth. No HOA covenant exists on my title, and certainly won't appear now." The facade completely dropped. Her tone became arctic. "We'll discover the truth, won't we, military man?" She accelerated that pontoon motor like fleeing a scene, generating waves that crashed into my dock violently enough to spill my beverage. Burning fuel smell and costly perfume lingered like a warning, contaminating the clean pine aroma until nausea set in. Watching her mansion windows gleam in sunrise like predator eyes, my military survival instinct activated, the one maintaining my safety through 3 overseas tours. This wasn't merely neighbor conflict. This meant war, and I sensed I'd just been conscripted. 3 days afterward, an envelope appeared taped to my entrance like a parking citation from hell. Inside sat the most creative fiction I'd encountered since my ex-wife's divorce demands. Lake Serenity Homeowners Association violation notice, blazed across costly letterhead in crimson text. Apparently, I owed $500 for dock appearance violations, with 30 days to comply or face escalating penalties and property liens. The paperwork looked impressive: official stamps, reference numbers, even legitimate-sounding terminology that would panic most people into payment. Unfortunately, it held less value than its printing material, though most wouldn't recognize that. Time for intelligence gathering. The Cedar Falls courthouse basement carried old leather and despair scents, where dust particles floated in fluorescent lighting like bureaucratic nightmare ghosts. My Army experience taught me that optimal intelligence comes from long-term filing staff, so I befriended Dolores, the 70-something county clerk. "Another HOA target, dear," she whispered, retrieving my property file with arthritis-affected hands. "That Carmichael woman visited 6 times this month inquiring about enforcement procedures and lien powers. Confidentially, honey, she's completely ignorant about property law." My deed was unmistakable: no covenants, restrictions, or HOA jurisdiction whatsoever. But my logistics training kicked in. Always investigate what enemies actually do while they distract with paperwork theater. Brenda's Lake Serenity Homeowners Association existed indeed, incorporated 18 months prior with precisely 12 members from 47 lake properties. Legally speaking, they possessed approximately as much authority over my land as my neighbor's feline. However, cross-referencing ownership records triggered my alert system. Multiple lakefront properties had recently transferred to Carmichael Holdings LLC. Quick internet research exposed reality. Our self-designated HOA leader operated an unlicensed vacation rental business, converting peaceful family cottages into party venues for Twin Cities vacationers. The woman preaching to me about community values was actually destroying them. That I recalled my grandfather's advice. Before challenging City Hall, understand who truly controls the city. Wise counsel. He'd also instructed me that most county information is publicly accessible: property ownership, business permits, covenant restrictions, all searchable online without cost. Amazing what knowledge emerges from actual research rather than mere threats. Armed with intelligence, I tested community attitudes through strategic social media reconnaissance. Facebook might destroy brain cells, but it reveals who's genuinely attentive in your area. My message was straightforward: has anyone else received violation notices from the Lake Serenity HOA? Seeking educational information. My phone erupted like exploding fireworks. 8 different lakeside residents sent private communications, each sharing their Brenda nightmare. She'd been methodically working around the lake like a legal intimidation cyclone, threatening elderly widows about bird feeders and young families regarding mailbox shades. Janet, a retired librarian with organizational abilities making the CIA envious, had documented everything in a binder. Tom from the marina shared photographs of Brenda's rejected checks and overdue fuel charges. Even 90-year-old Florence contributed observations about suspicious late-night activities at Brenda's alleged family rentals. That I established a private group chat named Lake Serenity Truth Squad, because fighting absurdity requires embracing dramatic comic book themes. That evening, an unknown number called. Brenda's voice flowed through the speaker like honey mixed with industrial poison. "Marcus, dear, I noticed your charming Facebook message. You're creating unnecessary difficulties for yourself. Simply asking questions, Brenda. Neighborly interest. Oh, sweetheart, you genuinely don't want to pursue this path with me." Her tone assumed that special quality women employ before ruining your credit. "I possess connections beyond your imagination, and I'll absolutely report you to proper authorities for harassment and online bullying." The connection ended, leaving me examining my phone and questioning what connections a vacation rental scammer believed she had with local police. As evening descended over the lake, I sat dockside, hearing gentle wave percussion against weathered timber, breathing air still carrying freedom and fish fry scents. Sunset painted everything golden, including Truth Squad members' homes scattered around the shoreline like fortress beacons. Brenda committed one crucial error. She picked conflict with someone actually skilled in intelligence gathering before warfare. If Brenda believed Facebook drama would frighten me away, she clearly hadn't researched military veterans properly. "We don't withdraw, We adapt, improvise, and occasionally overthink everything until 3 a.m. while planning 17 different combat strategies. Tuesday morning delivered a surprise visitor, Tom Hendris from County Code Enforcement, appearing as enthusiastic as someone facing dental work. His pickup arrived at precisely 9 a.m. because apparently Brenda valued punctuality when filing baseless complaints. Mr. Marcus, apologies for disturbing you, but I must investigate reports about dock infractions and an abandoned vehicle. Tom appeared embarrassed, revealing everything about Brenda's accusation quality. I served him actual coffee rather than government office battery acid, and we walked down to examine my supposedly criminal dock arrangement. Tom measured everything twice, consulted his clipboard, then shook his head like someone who'd wasted their morning on nonsense. Confidentially, he said, lowering his voice despite our solitude, this is the 23rd complaint I've received from the same address in 6 months. Lady has county office on speed dial. Then Tom revealed something interesting. Brenda actually attempted slipping him a $100 bill during their previous encounter, calling it a consulting payment for finding creative building code interpretations. The woman wasn't merely playing neighborhood dictator. She was testing waters for minor corruption that my grandfather always stated. Judge people by their treatment of service workers and government staff. Apparently, Brenda's approach was either intimidation or bribery. That evening, the Truth Squad observed Brenda's emergency HOA gathering as spectators, which proved as democratic as a North Korean election. The meeting occurred in her mansion's great room, a space so aggressively decorated it resembled an exploded furniture showroom in beige and gold tones. Only 6 attendees appeared, mostly property managers from her rental operation, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Brenda had prepared an elaborate slideshow titled, Protecting Our Community Investment, complete with property value charts and photographs of non-compliant properties that all belonged to people rejecting her HOA. Janet, bless her librarian soul, documented like recording war crimes. But genuine intelligence came when she noticed Brenda repeatedly checking an expensive watch and nervously glancing toward the kitchen. During the bathroom intermission, because nothing says professional meeting like a living room bathroom break, Janet followed Brenda and overheard a heated phone conversation. I told you payments are coming, Brenda hissed into her device. These individuals are more obstinate than anticipated, but I've developed new approaches. Legal pressure, code enforcement, whatever necessary. Pieces assembled like a red flag puzzle. This wasn't about community standards or property values. Someone was applying financial pressure to Brenda, and she desperately attempted generating income through harassment and intimidation. I'd witnessed this pattern in the Army. Extremely stressed people make increasingly desperate choices until they cross previously unthinkable boundaries. The question remained, who controlled Brenda's financial leash? My answer arrived faster than expected. While researching her attorney, the same individual who sent that threatening cease and desist letter, I discovered he specialized in foreclosure defense and debt collection, not exactly the attorney hired for neighborhood disputes unless you're already drowning in legal troubles. So, I did what any reasonable person would. I filed my own complaint against Brenda for harassment, submitting false reports, and misusing county resources for personal vendettas. 2 could play the bureaucracy game, and I'd practiced dealing with military paperwork extensively. Then I escalated further. Using the property management company's contact information from rental advertisements, I contacted the actual owner of Brenda's mansion. Turns out Northwood's property management was extremely interested hearing about their tenants' creative lease interpretation and unauthorized business operations. Sheriff's Deputy Rodriguez, who'd been monitoring complaint patterns from our lake, pulled me aside after I filed my countercomplaint. Unofficially, he said, leaning against his vehicle while evening light caught the lake like scattered diamonds. We've been documenting everything. Nothing criminal yet, but she's walking an extremely thin line, and we're observing. That night, sitting dockside with gentle wave sounds mixing with distant laughter from an actual family barbecue across the lake, I realized Brenda made a fundamental tactical mistake. She assumed everyone would surrender like frightened civilians. Instead, she'd accidentally unified a community that had quietly minded its business for decades. Charcoal smell and honest conversation drifted across water, blending with pine-scented evening air, still meaning home. Tomorrow would bring new battles, But tonight the good side was winning that if Brenda believed code enforcement was her ultimate weapon, she clearly hadn't graduated to actual bureaucratic mass destruction weapons yet. That distinction was reserved for what occurred at 6:30 a.m. on a Thursday morning, starting peacefully and going sideways faster than a greased pig at a county fair, that I was enjoying my morning coffee ritual. That sacred first sip making you believe the world might not be completely insane. When unmistakable police vehicle tire sounds on gravel shattered the lake's morning calm. Blue lighting strobed across my cabin walls like twisted aurora borealis, and I could practically sense Brenda's satisfaction radiating from her mansion balcony across the water. Two officers exited their vehicle, appearing as thrilled as mall security guards summoned to disrupt a senior citizen flash mob. The younger officer had that fresh-faced earnestness of someone still believing every emergency call is genuine. His partner, a weathered veteran with sergeant stripes and the exhausted expression of someone who'd witnessed every human stupidity variety, clearly knew this would be another taxpayer money waste. "Mr. Marcus, we've received reports you're trespassing on private property and made threatening statements toward a female resident. I invited them inside for coffee because honestly, if you're falsely accused at dawn, you might as well be civilized about it." The senior officer, Sergeant Peterson per his name tag, accepted gratefully, probably because government coffee tastes like liquid regret mixed with budget cuts. "Sir, we must respond to all calls," Peterson said, settling into my grandfather's old kitchen chair that creaked like storm-tossed ship timbers. "But confidentially, this complaint doesn't pass scrutiny." That's when I produced my secret weapon: documentation, security camera footage, property deeds, the complete Brenda harassment campaign timeline, and even Tom the code enforcement officer's written statement about attempted bribery. I'd learned in the Army that paperwork wins wars, and this particular battle was about to become very one-sided. Peterson reviewed footage of my supposed threatening behavior, showing me helping elderly Florence load fishing gear into her vehicle while Brenda lurked behind her mansion windows like suburban spy novel villain. The trespassing occurred on a public access road that had been public since before Brenda's birth, despite shiny new private property signs she'd posted overnight like legal fairy dust. "Sir," Peterson muttered, shaking his head at footage, "either you're the world's most polite terrorist or somebody's been manipulating us." While officers reviewed my evidence, my phone rang. Dave Morrison, a private investigator moonlighting at the local tackle shop and appearing capable of arm wrestling bears, had completed the background check I'd commissioned. His discoveries would make soap opera writers weep with envy. Brenda Carmichael owed $47,000 in unpaid HOA fees from her previous Minneapolis community. The irony was thick enough to cut with a butter knife and serve at the county fair. She'd been sued by that HOA and lost, explaining her intimate knowledge of legal intimidation tactics. More concerning, she owed money to everyone from contractors to credit card companies, with a pattern of using legal threats to delay payments until creditors abandoned claims or settled for pennies. But here's where things got truly interesting. Dave discovered Brenda's rental operation violated 3 different zoning ordinances, none requiring business licenses she'd never obtained. The county had no record of her vacation rental business, meaning she'd been operating illegally while lecturing everyone about community standards. The Truth Squad had expanded to 15 lake residents, each with their own Brenda nightmare. Tom at the marina revealed she owed $3,200 in dock fees and threatened suing him for discrimination when he demanded payment. The hardware store owner shared security footage of Brenda ordering supplies, then disputing charges with her credit card company, claiming defective materials she'd never returned. The pattern was clear as lake water on calm mornings. Brenda used legal intimidation to avoid paying legitimate debts, hoping people would rather write off losses than fight her in court. Peterson finished reviewing my documentation and shook his head like someone who'd just realized he'd been hunting unicorns. "Mr. Marcus, I strongly recommend considering charges for filing false police reports. This lady's been using us as her personal enforcement force, and that ends today." As officers departed, their tires crunching across gravel, now sounding like victory, I noticed Brenda's silhouette disappearing from her mansion window. Morning mist rose off the lake, carrying the clean pine scent and possibility that MY attorney had scheduled tomorrow morning's meeting, claiming he had news that would change everything. Something in his voice suggested Brenda's house of cards was about to collapse in ways she never anticipated. The loons called across water, their haunting song mixing with distant sounds of normal people starting their day without threatening lawsuits or bribing public officials. Arthur Peton had been my grandfather's attorney since Carter was president, and at 78, he still dressed like arguing Supreme Court cases. His office smelled like old leather and expensive cigars, with law books stacked so high they threatened toppling over and burying unwary clients in centuries of legal precedent. "Marcus, you should sit for this," Arthur said, adjusting wire-rimmed glasses, probably witnessing the Constitution's signing. "I've been reviewing your grandfather's estate more carefully, and there's something we missed." He spread documents across his mahogany desk like a poker player revealing a royal flush: property deeds, trust agreements, incorporation papers, all bearing signatures and dates I'd never seen. "When your grandfather died, you inherited more than just the cabin," Arthur continued, his voice carrying that careful tone lawyers use when dropping bombshells. "In 1987, he created the Northwoods Property Trust as a tax shelter. You now own 60% controlling interest in a trust holding for lakefront properties." My coffee mug stopped halfway to my lips. "For properties, including the $800,000 mansion currently occupied by one Brenda Carmichael." The words hit me like a wet fish slap. I'd been fighting my own tenant unknowingly. For 3 years, Brenda had been paying rent to a property management company, depositing her payments into an account I never knew existed. The woman terrorizing me about property standards was literally putting money in my pocket monthly. Arthur produced a lease agreement thick enough to stop bullets. "Your grandfather was thorough. This lease includes clauses about peaceful neighboring property enjoyment, prohibition of unlicensed business activities, and maintaining community harmony. Ms. Carmichael has violated approximately 14 different terms." The irony was so perfect, it felt like divine intervention. Brenda had been harassing her own landlord while falling behind on rent payments, operating illegal businesses, violating her lease, and systematically disturbing other tenants in the same property trust. "How behind is she on rent?" I asked, though I suspected I knew. 2 months with accumulating late fees. The property management company was actually preparing eviction proceedings, but they needed trust approval. "That's you, incidentally." I stared at the documents, my mind racing through 3 years of deposited payments I'd attributed to some mysterious inheritance account. Brenda's desperate behavior suddenly made perfect sense. She wasn't just facing harassment complaints and zoning violations. She was about to lose her home base for the entire rental operation. "Arthur, she doesn't know I'm her landlord, correct?" His weathered face cracked into a smile belonging in courtroom victory photographs. "Not unless she's considerably smarter than her recent behavior suggests." The strategic implications hit me like a tactical revelation. I could evict Brenda immediately for lease violations, but that felt like winning through technicality rather than justice. My grandfather had always taught me that real power meant knowing when not to use it. "What would you recommend?" Arthur leaned back in his chair, which creaked like old ship timbers in storms. "Give her one final opportunity to make this right. Document everything. Offer mediation. Show you tried resolving things reasonably. Courts appreciate landlords who exhaust diplomatic options before pulling the nuclear trigger." But if she escalated further, Arthur tapped the eviction notice he'd already prepared. 30 days to vacate for multiple lease violations. Clean, legal, and absolutely devastating to her financial house of cards. I walked out of Arthur's office feeling like I discovered I'd been playing chess, while everyone else thought we were playing checkers. Afternoon sun painted Main Street golden, and for the first time in months, I felt like the universe might actually have a sense of humor. Brenda Carmichael, HOA dictator and vacation rental queen, had been paying her worst enemy to let her destroy his peace and quiet. Sometimes the best revenge is discovering you held all the cards from the very beginning. You know that feeling when you're assembling IKEA furniture and suddenly realize you've been holding the instruction manual upside down for 3 hours? That's exactly how I felt walking out of Arthur's office, except instead of a wobbly bookshelf, I'd accidentally become my own worst enemy's landlord. Time to build a case that would make Perry Mason weep with professional jealousy. Arthur became my strategic advisor, channeling decades of courtroom wisdom into what he called the nuclear option playbook. His office transformed into mission control with manila folders spreading across every surface like legal kudzu. The man had been filing documents since Nixon wore diapers, and he approached this case with Swiss watchmaker methodical precision. Think of landlord-tenant law like coaching a football team, Arthur explained, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against yellow legal pads. You set clear rules. Players follow them, or they're benched permanently. No personal feelings, just consequences for documented violations. Dave Morrison, my private investigator who could probably track ghosts through snowstorms, delivered his final report with the satisfied expression of someone who'd struck gold in someone else's backyard. Brenda owed $73,000 across multiple creditors, had tax liens pending on her previous Minneapolis property, and a credit score making subprime mortgages look attractive. Here's something your audience should know, Dave said, sliding papers across Arthur's desk. You can search public records online for anyone's property liens, judgments, and tax issues in most counties. Knowledge is power in disputes, and most of this information costs nothing but time to find. Janet, a retired librarian turned intelligence analyst, had organized the community documentation project with efficiency, making the Pentagon weep with envy. Her 3-ring binder contained time-stamped photographs, witness statements, and a cross-reference index of Brenda's harassment incidents reading like a criminal psychology textbook. The marina owner provided receipts for unpaid bills and photocopies of bounced checks, Janet reported, adjusting reading glasses that had seen more neighborhood drama than soap opera writer fever dreams. Local contractors shared identical stories about payment disputes followed by legal threats. Sheriff's Deputy Rodriguez, who'd been tracking complaint patterns with bloodhound dedication following bacon grease, provided guidance straddling the line between official procedure and friendly advice. Document everything, he emphasized, leaning against Arthur's filing cabinet. Courts want to see that reasonable people tried reasonable solutions before things escalated. The technical preparation felt like planning military operations if military operations involved elderly librarians and small-town lawyers plotting vacation rental empire downfalls. That I installed additional security cameras with audio recording capability because apparently my property had become more surveilled than a federal courthouse. Security cameras with audio can legally record on your own property in most states, Arthur noted, checking local statutes in a book thick enough to stop small arms fire. Always verify local laws first, but documented evidence beats, he said, she said, every time. We developed what Arthur called the escalation protocol, a step-by-step plan giving Brenda every opportunity to save face while documenting her refusal to act reasonably. First, I'd approach her as a concerned neighbor offering mediation through county community services. If she refused or escalated, we'd reveal the landlord relationship publicly at the next town council meeting. Janet researched Robert's rules of order like preparing for Senate hearings, while Arthur prepared legal notice templates for every possible scenario. The man had contingency plans for his contingency plans, including backup strategies involving everything from zoning enforcement to potential criminal charges for filing false police reports. Always give someone a face-saving way out of conflict, Arthur advised, organizing documents with medieval monk illuminating manuscript precision. Courts appreciate parties who attempted reasonable resolution, and juries hate bullies who refuse reasonable offers. The Truth Squad had evolved into a neighborhood watch program, making the NSA proud. 15 Lake residents coordinated through our group chat, sharing real-time updates about Brenda's increasingly erratic behavior. Tom at the marina agreed to document any future incidents, while local businesses committed to supporting our paper trail with their own harassment documentation. We even prepared media contacts in case the situation reached public interest levels. The local newspaper editor had already expressed curiosity about the lake dispute, especially after hearing whispers about bribery attempts and zoning violations. The community protection aspect felt like something from a feel-good movie, except with more legal documentation and fewer musical numbers. Several elderly neighbors installed security cameras after Brenda's intimidation visits, while Truth Squad members started accompanying vulnerable residents during errands to prevent isolated confrontations. I sat in Arthur's office that evening, surrounded by evidence folders and strategic planning documents. The smell of old law books mixing with Janet's homemade cookies and Dave's cigar smoke faint aroma. I realized we'd accidentally created something beautiful, a community that refused to be bullied. Tomorrow, I'd give Brenda one final chance to choose dignity over destruction. After that, the nuclear option was locked and loaded. If Brenda thought my growing community support was just neighborly chit-chat, she clearly hadn't been paying attention to the tactical situation developing around her. What happened next proved that desperate people make spectacularly stupid decisions, especially when they're cornered like rabid raccoons in designer cardigans. The sabotage started subtly, which should have been my first warning that Brenda had graduated from amateur hour harassment to genuine criminal behavior. She'd been monitoring our Truth Squad activities through Facebook stalking that would make teenage ex-girlfriends proud, creating fake profiles to gather intelligence and spread counter-narratives about my supposed instability. Tuesday night, my security cameras caught something making my military paranoia look like casual concern. At 2:17 a.m., a pickup truck matching her handyman's vehicle crept past my dock like a suburban ninja mission gone wrong. The driver wore a baseball cap pulled low, but the truck's license plate was clearly visible under my new LED floodlights. Wednesday morning brought a surprise that would have ruined my day if I hadn't learned to expect the worst from people wearing too much perfume and carrying legal threats. My fishing boat was sitting half-submerged at the dock, looking like a maritime crime scene. The drain plug had been removed with surgical precision. Not loose, not damaged, just gone. $2,800 in water damage to the motor and electronics, plus tackle gear that had been in my family longer than Brenda had been alive. The smell of lake water mixed with oil and gasoline created an aromatic cocktail screaming insurance claim and criminal charges. But here's where Brenda's desperation revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of how evidence works in the 21st century. My security cameras had captured everything in glorious high-definition detail, complete with audio of her handyman muttering about crazy lady jobs while he worked. That I filed the police report with methodical precision of someone who'd been documenting harassment for months. Sheriff's Deputy Rodriguez arrived within an hour, took one look at the video evidence, and shook his head like someone watching taxpayer money circle the drain. "This crossed a line," Rodriguez said, examining the deliberately removed drain plug. "Property damage is a felony if it exceeds $1,000, and your electronics alone put this in serious criminal territory." While I was dealing with insurance adjusters and marine mechanics, Brenda was apparently having her own version of a nervous breakdown across the lake. Truth Squad members reported increasingly erratic behavior, making her previous harassment look like polite conversation, as she'd started approaching elderly neighbors with door-to-door cult recruiter subtlety, demanding they choose sides in what she called the lake war. Florence, bless her 90-year-old heart, told Brenda exactly where she could stick her loyalty demands, using language making sailors blush and Sunday school teachers take notes. Tom at the marina finally banned Brenda from the fuel dock after she screamed at a teenage employee about conspiracy pricing and discrimination against successful businesswomen. The kid was making $8 hourly and probably couldn't spell conspiracy, much less orchestrate one against vacation rental queens. The grocery store incident became local legend within 24 hours. Brenda had a complete meltdown at the checkout line, accusing the cashier of overcharging her and demanding to speak to corporate headquarters about systematic harassment of professional women. The manager, a patient woman dealing with everything from coupon fraud to holiday shopping madness, asked Brenda to leave after she started filming other customers while shouting about witnesses to discrimination. But the real intelligence goldmine came from Janet's library research skills, which had uncovered Brenda's residential history going back 8 years. The pattern was identical at every address: neighbor disputes escalating to harassment complaints, accusations of unstable and dangerous behavior directed at anyone standing up to her, and eventual departure under circumstances suggesting legal pressure. Previous landlords described identical escalation patterns ending in eviction proceedings. One Minneapolis property manager had documented a restraining order after Brenda threatened destroying a neighbor who complained about her unlicensed dog breeding operation. Another apartment complex had security footage of her keying cars belonging to residents who'd reported noise violations. Meanwhile, my silent preparation intensified like military operations approaching D-Day. Arthur filed a restraining order documenting the property damage and harassment pattern. We coordinated with the insurance investigator about potential fraud charges since Brenda's handyman had conveniently developed amnesia about his late-night marina visits. The pressure was building from multiple directions. Online reviews for Brenda's vacation rentals started mentioning unstable management and neighborhood disputes, causing her booking rates to plummet faster than her credit score. The property management company received formal complaints about tenant behavior violating community standards. County zoning enforcement had begun their formal investigation into unlicensed business operations, while local newspaper editors started asking uncomfortable questions about corruption allegations and harassment patterns. I sat on my repaired dock that evening, listening to gentle waves splash against new bumpers and breathing air smelling like victory mixed with pine needles. I realized Brenda had made one final tactical error. She turned criminal behavior into documented evidence that would destroy her in any court of law. When desperate people run out of legal options, they usually do one of two things: accept defeat gracefully or double down on stupid until they achieve legendary status. Brenda, being Brenda, chose door number 2 with kamikaze pilot enthusiasm, heading for an aircraft carrier. What happened next would have been hilarious if it wasn't so pathetically criminal. County Commissioner Bill Hayes had been serving Cedar Falls for 12 years without a single ethics complaint, which made Brenda's approach about as welcome as a tornado at a church picnic. According to Bill's later testimony, she strutted into his office Tuesday morning carrying a designer purse and the kind of confidence that comes from huffing your own supply of entitlement. "Commissioner Hayes, I have a proposition that could benefit both of us," Brenda announced, sliding an envelope across his desk like buying state secrets instead of trying to bribe a small-town politician who probably made less than her monthly shoe budget. $5,000 cash for consulting services regarding the environmental hazard that is his property. She actually used air quotes while suggesting my grandfather's cabin should be condemned as a threat to lake water quality. Bill Hayes had been in politics long enough to recognize corruption when it walked into his office wearing white capris and desperation perfume. He'd immediately reported the attempted bribery to the district attorney's office, triggering an investigation that would make Watergate look like a parking ticket dispute. But Brenda wasn't finished shopping her criminal services around town like some kind of corruption door-to-door salesperson. She made similar approaches to the zoning inspector and even attempted to bribe a sheriff's deputy with what she called a community safety donation for overlooking her minor business license oversights. The zoning inspector, a by-the-book guy named Carl who treated building codes like holy scripture, actually wore a wire during their second meeting. The recording quality was so clear, you could hear Brenda's jewelry jingling as she counted out bills while explaining how Marcus, the dangerous veteran, needed to be relocated for community safety. Sheriff's Deputy Rodriguez documented her bribery attempt in an official report reading like a criminal justice textbook example of how not to influence public officials. The woman had managed to turn a neighborhood dispute into a federal case faster than you could say conspiracy to commit corruption. When Arthur called with news about the DA's investigation, his voice carried that special tone lawyers use when trying not to sound too satisfied about their client's vindication. "Marcus, she's facing potential prison time. Bribery of public officials is a felony that carries serious consequences." I felt conflicted in ways my military training hadn't prepared me for. I'd wanted justice, not to watch someone's life implode in real time. But Brenda had crossed lines, transforming neighbor disputes into criminal territory, and there was no putting that toothpaste back in the tube. The local newspaper editor, who'd been tracking the story with bloodhound persistence following bacon grease, contacted me for an interview. "This has grown beyond neighborhood problems," she explained. "Public corruption allegations are legitimate news, and the community deserves to know what's happening." The media attention triggered Brenda's final public meltdown, which occurred at the boat launch in front of 27 witnesses who probably thought they were just coming to launch their fishing boats, not watch a daytime television drama unfold in real time. "This is all conspiracy," Brenda screamed, pointing at me with enough venom to kill small wildlife. "He's been stalking and terrorizing me for months. I demand he pay my legal fees and moving expenses." The accusation was so ridiculous that several witnesses actually laughed out loud. Florence, who'd been loading fishing gear with the patience of someone who'd outlived 3 husbands and 2 presidents, finally spoke up with the authority of someone who'd earned the right to say exactly what she thought. Honey, I've lived on this lake for 60 years, and you're the problem here. That boy hasn't done anything but fish and mind his